Hey everyone, welcome back to episode 5 of 19 Bosses, where we pull back the shiny curtain of corporate America and tell relatable stories in hopes of helping you all navigate the business world. I'm Julie. And I'm Sabrina. Today we are joined by my dog Buddy. I don't know if you guys can see him, but we're actually bringing you a story that we like to call Google and Visa.
Yes. So this week we are going to be talking about how one of my first international business trips led to Google changing their international travel policy, actually across their entire company, to make sure what happened to me didn't happen to anyone else. The lesson I learned from this story: trust but verify. I mean, had I researched my own question, maybe the whole mess could have been avoided. But looking back, I can laugh at it now. Unfortunately, as always, I learned the hard way. And I don't wish the stress that I had during this ordeal on my least favorite boss. So do yourself a favor and check out travel policies before you travel anywhere outside the US.
If I remember correctly, this story has twists and turns and a lot of adventure. Where should we even start?
Yeah, it certainly does, Sabrina. I mean, a little bit of a backstory, I guess, first. So I was working for a company that had a pretty significant partnership with Google at the time. Now, this partnership was important for both organizations as we were working to help Google evangelize all the good work that we and other Google partners were doing across North America. Our goal was to help small and medium-sized businesses grow their customer base through their online presence. Now, at the time, Google was hosting events in South America to share information about the partnership opportunities for businesses. There were two events in particular that a colleague and myself were asked to attend and speak at. I mean, I jumped at the opportunity. Not many people would turn that down, right?
Had you traveled internationally before for work?
Well, I had been asked to do some international travel prior to this, yes. But I actually turned those opportunities down.
Why did you turn those down and not this?
Well, believe it or not, I'm not a fan of public speaking. Guessing there are quite a few folks listening in who may also struggle with anxiety that can come from public speaking. We plan to dive deeper into that topic in a future episode, so I'm just going to put a pin in that for now.
It's pretty ironic that now we have a podcast and you've even recently gone on to a couple different other podcasts talking about what you've been doing since you left corporates.
Yes, well, life has definitely taken some unexpected turns. And as I always say, you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. You never know where life will take you.
What made you say yes to this trip in particular?
Well, I mean, I took it as an opportunity to push myself out of my comfort zone. That year, I had told myself that I would try to speak at least 3 conferences, and this crossed 2 of them off of my list. But back to the story. Okay, so the plan was to go to 2 different cities, Buenos Aires and San Paulo. The first city on our list was Buenos Aires. I mean, the city was beautiful and the people were so friendly. We had some amazing food. I think they're known for their food, but it was just spectacular. We got to see some amazing sights, and they arranged this great dinner for us where there were flamenco dancers. We weren't expecting that. It was a really nice surprise.
That's amazing. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it was spectacular. I mean, it was a really unique experience. And I felt very honored that I was able to participate in an event like that.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what about the event itself? What was that like?
Yeah, well, the event was, of course, very well attended, very well organized, and pretty much everything that you would expect an event to be that Google was hosting. It was actually, for me, it was especially memorable because, again, it's down in South America. You've got people speaking Spanish, Portuguese. So they had these headsets to be able to translate what myself and my colleague were saying to the attendees and their spoken language. And that was really cool. I had never experienced something like that.
That's incredible. I mean, wow.
Yeah, it was fun. Again, first time down there, so it was really, I guess, to experience a lot of different experiences that I probably wouldn't have otherwise had the opportunity to do. But at the event itself, some of the details may be a bit blurry because if I'm being honest, I was pretty nervous to speak, but I did manage to get up on stage. I mean, I think I did a good job. Maybe, who knows? People were telling me different things that sounded positive. I mean, honestly, hopefully there's no videos floating around from when I was actually on stage. So,
Always gonna kill me when I say this, but if anyone has these clips, please send them to us. I would love to see them. I think it'd be a pretty good laugh. And Julie, I'm sure that you didn't do as bad as you think you did. Our emails contest@19bosses.com. If you have those, please send them our way.
we're cutting that out, Sabrina.
We'll see, we'll
Please
see.
send in those videos if you have them. I'm sure it's Google. They're floating around somewhere, but
But it
it's
sounds like it was a great trip, you know.
yeah. I mean, it was until it wasn't. So we were leaving Buenos Aires to head to San Paulo, and when we arrived at the airport, very very early in the morning, to catch our flight, this is where things started to get messy.
What
So,
happened at the airport? I mean, you got into Argentina, so if you'd already made it out, there shouldn't have been any issues going to Brazil, right?
well, this ties back to how last week I mentioned that one simple question, and actually the answer can change a whole story. So apparently, there were some changes to Brazil's travel regulations, and this detail was missed when booking my trip. Now, when Google was coordinating all of my travel plans, I was very clear, very specific. I had never been to South America. And I asked if there were any specific documents that I would need for the trip. I was told that my US passport was all I needed. Well, apparently, I needed a visa to get into Brazil. I mean, it was an honest mistake. So,
Why was the visa required for Brazil but not Argentina?
well, at the time, it has something to do with reciprocity between the US and Brazil. Uh, so, the chain of events that were kicked off because I was told no to a document that I absolutely needed, that pretty much sucked.
Did you find all of this out when you were actually at the airport?
Yeah. So here I am standing in front of the gate agent, and she asked to see my visa. I mean, I could not believe my ears. Now, there was a language barrier, so I thought maybe I wasn't understanding her correctly, but no, I heard her correctly. We needed a visa to be allowed to enter Brazil. Correction. I needed a visa. Apparently, this only pertained to US citizens. My colleague, well, she had dual citizenship with Ireland, so she whips out a red passport, and they're like, "Oh, okay," and they just let her out. And I
Where
was like,
were
"Wait."
so they let her in on the flight, obviously into Brazil, but where were your Google partners at the time?
Well, our counterparts from Google, they weren't with us. They actually had a later flight, so it was just my colleague and myself, and we stood there for about 20 minutes discussing whether or not she should go or whether she should stay behind with me. I mean, I know that she hated to leave me by myself in a foreign country where I didn't speak the language, but they had flown us down there to do a job, and it was really important that she made it to Brazil, and I totally got that.
Is this when you started calling Dad and I and leaving all of those crazy voicemails at all hours?
Yes, it
Yeah,
was.
I remember those. A little traumatic, little traumatic.
Yeah, so I called home, and I kept calling home, but you and your dad were sleeping and nobody was answering the phone, so I couldn't reach you, and it was really really frustrating.
Don't worry,
um
we all heard it when we woke up.
I don't know how many messages I left. I know it was a lot. um but you weren't the only ones that I was calling relentlessly. When calling you didn't work, I called my boss, and I left him multiple voicemails. And when he didn't pick up, well, I tried my counterparts at Google. But it wasn't that easy to make all of these calls because I had to keep going to a bank of payphones to be able to call anyone.
Wait, you were not using a cell phone?
No, no, I was not. I thought I had an international plan on my phone, but something went wrong and it wouldn't work. So I was left to use the payphones. And I don't know
Nice.
if, it was horrible. It was horrible because you weren't just going up to a payphone. I mean, I don't know if anyone has been at the airport in Buenos Aires. And again, this was some time ago, so things may have changed. But when I was there, you had to wait in a queue. You got a ticket with a number, which put you in line to make a phone call. Need to make another call? Well, you need another ticket. So go get back in line. I mean, it was stressful. And not to mention that I had all of my luggage and all my crap that I was lugging around. I am sure that I looked like a hot mess.
How many calls did you make before someone finally answered?
I honestly cannot remember. I mean, it was a lot. I just know that I kept getting that line. And I mean, at some point, the airport employees, I don't know what they were saying, but they were all talking, and I know they were talking about me. And once I did speak with someone who understood a little bit more English. And so I was sharing my story, and they felt sorry for me. I think they were probably sick of me going and using the payphone, but he gave me the number for the US Embassy, or at least so I thought.
What do you mean, so you thought?
Well, it may have been a personal number of someone who worked in the US Embassy.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't care at that point. I was desperate, and they said that this was the number for the US Embassy. So it's crack of dawn, and I called the number they gave me. And when the person didn't pick up, well, I kept calling until I got some guy out of bed. He told me, he's like, "You woke me from a sound sleep. You
Oh, so
like."
I'm sure he was less than thrilled. And he was probably trying to figure out how you got his home number. So this wasn't an embassy number. This was like his home phone, direct line, something like that.
It had to have been. It had to have been, unless they had like the phones forwarded to him or something. But looking back, I think it was because he even said some point, like, "How'd you get this number?" And I was like, "I don't know. Somebody gave it to me." So, I mean, that's his problem to figure out. Yeah. To this day, I mean, I have no idea how an airport employee had a home number of some guy that worked at the U.S. Embassy. But this guy was not thrilled. But maybe because I sounded so helpless, he didn't simply hang up on me. So he told me there was absolutely nothing that he could do. Great. And that there was no way I would be allowed into Brazil without a visa. Now, he did say that I could try to go to the Brazilian embassy in Buenos Aires and plead my case, but it was a long shot.
So you left the airport and just went straight to the embassy?
Well, no, I didn't go straight there. I was actually able to get hold of my Google counterparts. It was a reasonable hour for them, and they started picking up their phone when I was calling. And I'm sure that they were overwhelmed by all the voicemails that I had left previously.
I'm sure.
But I brought them up to speed on what had happened. My main contact, and he couldn't believe it. I heard him cover the phone with his hand and tell all of his colleagues that were nearby, "Hey, U.S. residents need a visa or dual citizenship to get into Brazil. Did anyone know that?" Oh my gosh. Fortunately for him and every other Googler that I was traveling with, they all had dual citizenship. So,
So you were the only one who couldn't go to Brazil.
yep. But we didn't know that for sure at the time. We hoped I could plead my case. So my plan was to go to the Google office in Buenos Aires, connect with the Google team, and then I would head to the Brazilian embassy to see what could be done. And I contacted Google, told me, here's the address for the Google office. Take a taxi here. We'll be waiting for you. Now, during the drive, which turned out to be 2 hours instead of 30 minutes because, of course, there was a subway strike that day and the road.
Something's gonna go wrong. It's gonna happen to you.
It was insane. It was absolutely insane. My taxi driver wanted to get off the highway and take back roads. And I was a little nervous about that. I was like, no, no, stay on the highway, stay on the highway. Of course, we're trying to communicate again, and nobody speaks the other person's language. And he'd had enough. He got off. We took the scenic route. It took 2 hours, but we eventually made it there.
Oh my gosh.
And while this is happening, my contacts at Google were working their connections to see if they could get me into Brazil. Well, they had no luck. So once I arrived at their office, it was clear that I had to actually go to the Brazilian embassy in person to plead my case. So fortunately, it was a quick trip to the Brazilian embassy, but I had to wait hours to be seen. I mean, I didn't have an appointment, right? So they're just working me in. And once I finally spoke with someone, I was asked to show them the program, which proved that I was actually speaking on behalf of Google at an event in San Paulo, and I was asked to provide lots of other documentation as well. But after waiting for approval, I was denied. Can't say I was too surprised. I mean, the woman that I spoke with could have cared less about my speaking engagement. The fact that Google was involved, honestly, any of it. She half-heartedly listened to my plea and told me in no uncertain terms that I was not going to be going to Brazil anytime soon.
I love that she let you go through the whole entire process though. She's like, I'll just waste her time, just have a good laugh. But that
Yeah.
was it. I mean, that was it. I mean, did you go home? Like what happened?
So that was it. I mean, I tried. Google tried, but I never made it to Brazil. So Google offered to put me up in a hotel for a few days in Buenos Aires. Honestly, I was so tired after all of that. All I wanted to do was go home, which I did. Exhausted, defeated, but a little bit wiser.
Have you made it or tried to go back to Brazil since?
No, I've never had the opportunity to go back to Brazil, which makes me a little bit sad. But Google did send me this very nice book after I didn't make it to Brazil.
Brazil in the rainforest. I love it.
Yes. It was, I keep it on my coffee table. People like to hear about why I have a book of Brazil, and then I get to tell this crazy story. So yes.
I love that. Hey, at least they send you a keepsake. That's kind of ironic. It's a good laugh.
Yeah. It's a good
yeah, a good reminder of this whole event.
Yes.
When were you finally able to talk to your boss and tell him everything that happened?
Yeah, well, when I finally made it back to the office. I
Oh
mean,
my gosh.
I never heard from him at all. I mean, I left so many crazy messages and he never tried to call me at all. I saw him in the office and he just said, "Oh, I see you finally made it back." Nice. But he was a jerk.
What about those counterparts at Google that you had? I know you said they offered to let you stay, but they help you make it back. How was that?
They were amazing. I mean, they went above and beyond. They were so apologetic, which they didn't need to be. I mean, I totally get it. And again, if I had asked the question and followed up and done my own research, then probably wouldn't have had this whole situation. But I can't imagine being in this situation without having those folks from Google help support me and help me. They were really, really generous. And eventually, because remember, I worked with them a lot and then traveled and did other things. So we'd always, there's always some kind of joke about Julie being able to get into, can she make it into Charlotte? Does she need a visa for Charlotte?
So it became the running joke every time you traveled with them.
Yeah. But they did tell me that's why I kind of said it at the beginning of the story, but I actually changed their travel policy. I mean, I kind of felt like a big deal that They made changes across. I mean, it may have been just like one sentence in their travel policy, but they implemented it because of what had happened to my situation. So,
Oh, I love that. That's very, very funny. And I'm sure you never made the mistake of not double checking country travel policies.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I learned that lesson the hard way. And I
As
think that,
always.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, sometimes those are the best lessons though, because you really get them. They really stick in. So, but I'd hate for anyone else to be in a position like I was, because again, I can laugh at it now, but at the time, it really sucked. So,
Yeah. And I mean, we know the world's changed just like it was then, the regulations between countries and just with everything. So a little PSA for anyone listening in. As we were kind of doing some more research on travel policies, what it was back when she was actually on this trip, and now we learned that there will be a new travel authorization requirements for anyone who's planning to travel from the US internationally into Europe. This was an article posted by Forbes, and they said that this will go into effect May 2025 and will be required for at least 30 different European countries.
yes, it is actually called the ETIAS, and that stands for European Travel Information and Authorization System. I think I got that right. So again, trust but verify.
We'll add the link to the Forbes article that we found on our website, also below in the description of this video, that discusses these changes for anyone who's interested in looking into them. But again, go do your own research. We just kind of wanted to throw it out there. Thank you
So,
guys so much for joining us today. I think this is a good change from some of our other episodes. We're a little bit more serious. This was fun, good laughter. Just kind of one of those ironic stories that Julie has. But going into next week, I think we wanted to change some things up. And take the conversation really down to the heart of why we started this podcast in the first place. So we thought it would be really a great opportunity for me to share a little bit more about my experiences in corporate and allow you guys to hear from both of us about why we're so passionate about our mission here with 19 Bosses.
yes, I'm excited to share a little bit more about why we're excited about 19 Bosses and why we are putting so much time and energy into it. So join us next week for episode 6, Passion Projects and Real Talks.
Yes, super excited about it. Thank you all so much for tuning in and see you guys next week.
Bye.